Welcome back. Again, I'm Tom Field with Information Security Media Group. Really pleased to welcome you to this session, which I entitle When Attack is Inevitable, How to Build Business Resilience. Got three terrific panelists here today. Let's meet them immediately. We have got Rocco Grillo, Managing Director, Global Cyber Risk and Incident Response Investigations with Alvarez and Marsal. Rocco, always a pleasure.
Likewise. Thank you for having me today.
Stephen Wallstedt is the CISO with ABN AMRO Holdings. Stephen?
Thanks for having me this morning, Tom. Appreciate it.
And of course, we've got Greg Kyrytschenko, Deputy CISO with Guardian Life. Greg, really pleased to have you here today.
Thanks, Tom. Great to be here. Appreciate the opportunity.
So let's jump right in here. We'll start here. Talk a little bit about your backgrounds and your current roles at your organizations. And Rocco, why don't you start and you can pass it right along to our other colleagues here as well.
Terrific. Thanks, Tom. And I've been fortunate to be part of the ISMG community for multiple years now. My background, I've been in consulting for pretty much all of my career, close to 25 years. The last 20, we'll say, evolved from IT security to cybersecurity to cyber resilience. And I think overall, I've been in leadership roles for leading global consultancies and really focusing on not just the cyber risk advisory and the response side of things, but bringing things together, that whole cyber resilience. And if you've seen anything or learned anything over the years, and even specifically the last 12 to 18 in the middle of the pandemic, it's not the end of the world if a company suffers an incident, experiences a cyber attack, whatever you'd like to call it. The more important thing is that term resilience, being better prepared, being proactive, and should that situation occur, be in a better position to monitor, detect, respond, limit the damage, and restore normal business operations.
Steve, you want to pick up?
Sure. Hi, Steve Wallstedt here, CISO for ABN AMRO Holdings here in New York, the investment bank arm of ABN AMRO. Again, thanks for the time to present today. Basically, we're here to talk about cyber resilience. My career has evolved. I've been in financial services pretty much my whole career. Started with IT into some IT risk and then cybersecurity, and which has evolved into this cyber resilient landscape. Like Rocco said, it's all about being prepared. It's all about managing your risks. It's all about how do we manage the risks throughout the life cycle, planning process, and resources, putting all those together to ensure that we have a resilient infrastructure that can maintain any changing business processes and the changing threat landscape that's out there.
Very good. Hey, Greg, introduce yourself a little bit, give us a little bit of background in your role today, please.
Great. Thanks, Tom. So yeah, Greg Kyrytschenko. I've been in security for about 20 years now. Really focus a lot in Department of Defense as far as contractor, and then also in financial services, and been focused a lot on the different aspects of security. My current role, I'm working in cybersecurity services, really focusing on threat and vulnerability management, incident response, cloud security, and a lot of the engineering that's going on there, as well as also identity and access management. So really covering the broad aspects of how do we build our technologies and make sure that we're more resilient in how we're able to defend against the ever-changing threat landscape, and also make sure that the controls are there and evolving to make sure that they're ready for the attacks that we're actually seeing.
Greg, let me start this next conversation with you, and then Steve, Rocco, I would love you just to jump in and give your responses as well. Over this past year, what would you say have been the cybersecurity threats of all of them that have concerned you absolutely the most?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Tom. And I think really some of the things that have made us more and more aware and things that we're facing is looking at the insider threat with everybody being able to work from home, work from anywhere. That's definitely been a strong consideration for things that we're keeping a close eye on. But also things like ransomware and denial of service, where attackers are picking whoever they want and targeting to go ahead and try and take them offline and really disrupt their business, and also potentially impact them from a financial perspective. So those are probably the three major things that I would say for us, and for me personally, that I've been really keeping me up at night.
So again, one of my major concerns has been, obviously the same as Greg. We work from home. your environment has now expanded to people's living rooms and basements and bedrooms and whatnot across the world, and basically anywhere throughout the country or the world. So again, it comes down to, the threats that we're getting hit with every day: denial of service, ransomware. Those are the ever-changing aspects that we have to pay attention to. The other side, again, is that data protection piece, around people working from home. So it's more about how do we manage our privilege access better, our endpoint monitoring, since that has been expanded, data loss prevention, network segmentation, and additional encryption of our data, being that we have, again, expanded the endpoints outside of our true network and into people's homes.
Great point, Steve, and Greg, you as well. And you covered most of it, but Tom, to your point, what really keeps us up at night, or the industry up at night, clients that we're helping, it's the way that these attacks, these incidents have evolved. Before, it used to be this, trying to disrupt an IT organization, exfiltrating data, but where things have evolved, and even getting into this resiliency side of things, the attackers aren't just trying to steal the data or the proverbial crown jewels. What the attackers are doing now, disrupting the business. And I think it's almost something that is feeding off of one another with companies that, not so much that they want to pay, but when you identify that critical asset, that crown jewels, the Achilles heel of the company, and really go beyond just the data and disrupting the business, hitting the lifeline of the company, whether it's revenue, or in some instances, we've seen some pretty sophisticated attacks. But if you go from industry to industry in the financial sector and beyond, in healthcare, you're talking about human life. When you look at some of these other situations, it really isn't just the business being disrupted. It's affecting the companies, the clients, the customers, the business partners that companies are serving. And if you look at it from a critical infrastructure standpoint, whether financial services, healthcare, the list goes on, there are so many threat vectors. And I think what the attackers have seen over the last 12 months, 18 months, not only the employees or companies being remote, displaced, whatever you like to call it, taking it one step further, exfiltrating the data, or trying to find some other situation where it's not only that company, but that attack is impacting the people that, or companies that they do business with. We like to call it, or the term that has evolved in the industry, from single extortion to double extortion to triple extortion, where an attack on a company, they're taking that information, not only extorting the company, but taking it even further to their end business partners, customers, clients, and the like.
Brock, I want to start this next question with you. And again, I want Steve, Greg, you jump in as well. Question is, why are we here discussing resilience now instead of avoidance? It almost sounds like a concession.
Well, I think, Tom,
Hey, Rocco, 1 second. We've lost your video for a second.
Am I back?
There you go.
Okay, sorry about that. Tom, I think we talked about earlier, how even the terms have changed from IT security to cybersecurity to cyber resilience. All those are still there. We're taking cyber resilience even into business resiliency, because some of the points I just made a moment ago, it's not just about the data. It's not just about the one company's crown jewels, but looking at the business disruption side of things. I think the more mature companies have gotten to the point that they know you can try to prevent attacks from happen. You can't stop them. We've seen the largest financial institutions, healthcare, retailers, media, entertainment, utilities, government, critical infrastructure, the list goes on. But to that end, it doesn't mean we wave the white flag. The idea of business resilience, the idea of metrics to go to your executives and boards and say we're secure, that's great that you can show red, yellow, green. The reality of it is, when your business suffers an incident, an exposure, or an attack that is designed to disrupt your business, the bigger piece companies want to know, do we have the resiliency in place? And that's that idea that you're saying, how do we go from cyber to, in the blink of an eye, it's extended to the business. We've got a business issue that's disrupting, and in a lot of instances, more and more, it's crossing over not only to working with the IT and business continuity, disaster recovery personnel. The business across the board needs to be prepared, and the more mature ones have taken these steps.
I want to double click on that in a minute, but first, Greg, Steve, let me get your perspectives. Why are we talking about resilience now instead of avoidance?
Sure, I think it's a very good question. I think the big piece is on, the disruption piece. You don't know when the disruption is actually going to happen. You don't know when the power is going to go out, when your internet's going to stop working. So those things do happen, and those are the variables that kind of come up, and it does create a level of chaos. So I think one of the major points that we're focusing on, and I'm pushing teams to do, and working with various different providers, is how do we go ahead and train ourselves and basically exercise and practice exactly how to be ready for these types of things, because we don't know when the attacks are going to take place, but we know that there's the likelihood that they most likely will at some point. So getting all teams on board, tech teams, business teams, even the leadership teams, and making sure that they're aware and we're setting the right expectations both to our leadership teams as well as also to our customers, as well as our employees, because I think that's a big thing, is making sure people are aware of what the kind of outcome is out in the threat landscape these days.
Yeah, I think this, like you said, this is a great question. Risk, we're here to manage risk for our business. And the only way to avoid risk is to not be participating in that type of business. That's really the only way of avoidance. So, there's so many different risks and challenges in today's world that avoidance is just not possible. So you have to plan, you have to mitigate, you have to be, I guess your plans have to be fluid enough so that you always have to change your process, so you can minimize the disruptions to your business. The objective, again, the business is the team that you have to manage to and keep that business up and running, and making sure that, you're cyber resilient helps to keep that business flowing and your day-to-day business running. Again, we can't shut down our business because, of a silly attack or some threat that's out there. We hope it doesn't happen. We know it's going to happen. We're all going to get hit with something at some point in time. But again, put these mitigating things in place, have our mitigants out there, and just, make your system more resilient and add some additional redundancy in there so that you don't have you lessen the risk to your business.
I appreciate that. Now I've got a question for each of you specifically. And Rocco, I'm coming back to you. Like I said, we're going to double click on that R word. Talk about the distinctions between cyber resilience, as you discussed, and business resilience.
Well, I think when you look at cyber resilience, you look at an attack from an IT security perspective. You look at things from cyber, you look in the CISO's organization. And I think we've established over the last 5 to 10 years, security is a business issue, no doubt, enterprise risk, things of that nature. But cyber is just one of the threat vectors when you get into business resiliency. Take it even one step further, crisis management. Cyber attacks are part of your crisis management plans. But when you look at operational risk, when you look at the business as a whole, is it access to our home office? Well, guess what? The last 2 years, if we've learned anything, we'll go remote as part of our plan. You've got physical attacks. You've got power outages. You've got things that are, whether it's a natural disaster, fire, earthquakes, flooding, things of that nature. We don't have to go too far back with the cold freeze that Texas suffered earlier this year and things of that nature. So while not cyber in nature, cyber has become a component of that. I think when you get into the cyber side of things, the difference between natural disasters or man-made disasters, like I just mentioned there, cyber, you've got that persistent threat that there's the initial incident or the attack, but now you've got a threat actor that is continuing to put countermeasures, as opposed to if power's out, well, we know we've got to get that power grid up and running. If there's a flood, we've got our contingencies. These are things that the society's been dealing with for decades, forever, even pandemics, not to the extent of COVID. But when you've got an attacker that's inside your network, they've disrupted the business, you've got countermeasures, things like backups. There's the persistent threat that keeps coming from the cyber side. But I think, again, back to the point, not just moving beyond, we can't stop the attacks from happening, but bringing it into the overall business resiliency as one of the multiple factors that business disruption takes into account.
Very good. Greg, I want to come back to you in the definition of resilience. When I think of it, I'm reminded of a prominent Asian restaurant chain a few years ago. They had a point of sale systems breach, and all of a sudden the old knuckle breakers came out to process credit cards. When you define resilience, does this mean going back to pencils and paper?
Yeah, and that's a great good question, Tom. I think when you look at it, it's how are you able to actually conduct your business, and what's your business model actually, provide, and what's the service that you're selling your customers? I think when it comes to, is it pencils and paper, can it actually be? And that's one of the questions. When we look at, how it's taken place over time, there's some good guidance that came out from the NIST and FFIEC booklet on cyber resilience and resilience from a business standpoint. But, what do you want to go ahead and do? And that's really establishing your business impact analysis and what your business continuity plans are. So each part of the business does have, their various types of, techniques and processes that are specific to that business of how they continue to operate and how do they get from there. And I think now that we're becoming a much more digital society, I think some businesses can revert back to the pencils and paper type of concept, but I think a lot of it has to be, how do we make sure that things continue to, the lights continue to stay on and things continue to operate. So building things with the appropriate level of backups and, high availability, and, having that ability to identify and set thresholds for when things are not actually appearing normal, and kind of getting that early warning system so that you're identifying when things are coming. So when the storm is coming, and you can actually prepare for when the storm is coming, so that when the storm is there, you weather the storm and you come out stronger on the other side.
Very good. Stephen, it's one thing to have a definition of resilience. How do you actually prepare your organization to be resilient?
Well, that's a great question as well. I think it, kind of comes down to, your planning. You got to, we have partners, your business is your number one partner. Then there's IT, your disaster recovery teams. But I start with, going back to my business. What is your goal for the year? What kind of new businesses do you want to implement next year? Get an understanding of the directions that they want to take. Then go back to make sure my risk assessments are updated and current, utilizing the BIA's business impact analysis from the disaster recovery team. Take all of that stuff together and put that into my annual cyber plan. So this way, and working with the partners, making sure that IT is on board with the plan, because again, they are a partner that you need to implement a lot of the tooling and some of the processes. Disaster recovery, can they manage this as well? And then you take that plan, you put it together, bring it back to your business. Can we fund the objectives here? Do we have the resources and the budget required to get it done? Then present that plan and the risks associated with it up to the board, get their approval to make it move forward. So I think it starts with the planning, but again, you have to have the fluidity in your plan, because again, things change throughout the year and time again, and just be able to, make those changes on the fly and adjust your assessments and manage those risks accordingly.
You made a point there I want to follow up on, and Greg, Rocco, I'd love you to jump in as well. At what point do senior management and the board need to get involved?
I think that's a great question, Tom. I think at the very onset of when you're building your incident response plan. Now, again, not in the nuts and bolts of it, but there's a lot of parallel efforts that go into an incident response plan. And unfortunately, sometimes it turns into an IT or IT security operations. That builds the foundation, but ultimately, there's different levels that need to be involved. When does legal come in? We're not going to go in and notify the CEO for every incident that takes place. I like to use the analogy, I can log into my PC 3 times with the incorrect password and I'm locked out. And technically, you have to call the help desk to get unlocked. That's logged as an incident. We're not going to go and call the CEO and say, hey, we suffered an incident. Likewise, an employee can click on a link, the proverbial phishing email, that turns into either a malware outbreak, ransomware attack, combination of both, one and the same. At that point, now we have to have the pieces in place. We can't just go off script. Well, it's like, Now we have to bring in legal. Now we have to go to the CEO. Now we have to go to the board. So I think at that front, building that plan, everyone has a role and responsibilities. But I think the biggest piece, to answer your question, Tom, within that plan, communications, escalation, collaboration, and even now when we get into the cyber resilience, even more so business disruption / business resiliency, it's taken it to the next level. Our execs need to know ahead of the curve, because for that reason, it's not just making them aware or letting them know what's going on. There's critical decisions that they're going to have to weigh in on.
Yeah, Steve, Greg, I love your perspective as well. At what point do senior management and the board need to get involved?
Yeah, I think the big thing, Tom, for us and my point of view is making sure that they're aware of what decisions could come up at any given point in time. Testing out and making sure that they're aware of these things through either tabletops or certain types of exercises where they know certain critical deep decision points, because it's more of being prepared and making sure that they're prepared to make those calls, as Rocco put it. So that when the time comes, they're going to be able to weigh in on those key decision points, and also having those clear lines of communication when something does happen, how to be able to go directly in there, but not going ahead and And I think you have to strike the right balance. You can't just everything is a crisis. You have to make sure that when the true crisis is, and know when to bring the team in.
Yeah, I kind of agree with what Greg was saying. Your senior management team are your decision makers. So again, they're the ones that are participating in your tabletops and your exercises. Making sure that your legal is on board locally. But do they have any cyber experience, or do you have outside counsel that they need to go to? Make sure they're part of your planning. Make sure they're part of your tabletop. Communication teams have to be involved. Get them there. I think the board then, what do you report up to the board? Like Rocco said, I don't report the incident of somebody, fat fingered their password. That's not an incident. But when the phishing email gets blown out across the entire network and starts taking a business line down, well, that obviously gets escalated up to the board. And, you're there to prepare a report and talk to them about what could we have done better, and they're prepared to understand the steps we took to make sure that our business was resilient, or the steps that we didn't take that we weren't resilient enough, and how we're going to remediate that going forward. So I think, again, senior management is more the immediate group, where the board then comes in down a little bit more down the line.
Stephen, what degree of ongoing training and testing are necessary? And of course, I want the others to weigh in also.
I think from a training and awareness perspective, it's got to be balanced. You kind of have to need to know what your business appetite is for training and awareness. I was in an organization that said, on a monthly basis, business leaders had to go in and log into our, learning management system and do different cybersecurity trainings. Some said, you got feedback that this was too much, but this was pushed down from a top-down process. Again, where do you do from these online training to awareness to tabletop exercises? Do you do one tabletop a year? Do you do 2 tabletops a year? Do you kind of, you try not to repeat the same tabletop? They kind of all, the same questions kind of keep coming up in the tabletop exercises themselves. You reach out to your partners in the outside world to, and you bring them in because they have other perspectives on tabletops as well. Again, I've used, not here to promote this, but, Rocco has been a great partner with us and done tabletops for me for years. And each time it's something different. So they've been excellent. And it's something that, we kind of pride ourselves on and push the issue through the level, the different chains of command. And what we try to do as well is, the first one you start with senior management. The next one you take the senior management out of play and you bring their deputies in, because again, senior management may not be available during an incident. Again, the CEO of the company's on a flight to, say, to Asia because they're doing business. They're out of contact for 12 hours. They may not know. So who's the CEO's deputy? You need to get them involved and be the decision maker. So again, I think those tabletops get those questions out there, make them think differently in how they manage the risks to the business.
Hey, Greg,
I think
Rocco,
even,
please. There you go.
I was going to say on that front, Tom, even, you talked about the training and awareness. Most companies, whether they're have to do it from a regulatory standpoint or even PCI with their annual trainings, I think a lot what we're encouraging clients to do is take it even one step further and blend in this additional training, because guess what? Attacks are happening across the board, across all industries, all sizes of companies, different geographies. And one of the things I think Greg touched earlier on, as well as Steve, with the employee awareness and training on the communication front, all too often companies will have external communications. They'll have even third-party firms that'll do their crisis reporting or disclosures. But equally important is internally, all too often, companies aren't sending the same communications, the protocols. And we've worked with a lot of companies where they will put together an FAQ for the company, half dozen points, succinct to the point, as opposed to if someone's in a call center, gee, I don't know, our company has suffered a glitch. I don't know what's going on. And the last thing you want them to do is speak, I think we may have suffered a cyber attack. So the same way companies want to disclose to the regulators, to the business partners, things that they're required to do, whether by law or they're contractually obligated to do, internally is equally important, having that protocol. One other piece that we've even seen out of doing these tabletop exercises, this idea of ransomware. When you do the exercises, make no mistake about it, you're doing it to identify areas, potential gaps, and you want to take it, like Greg said, test that muscle memory. It's not a bad thing to identify a gap or an area of improvement. The same way when there's a new car that's being test driven or a fighter jet that goes out, guess what? You don't just start flying it or driving a car without testing it. The same thing, whether you've got an existing incident response plan or someone has built a new plan for you, you got to test drive it and see what works, what doesn't work. And then further to that, this piece of ransomware with the US Treasury, OFAC, sanctioning nations, we've seen a lot of these executive orders. When you go through the tabletop exercises, you can't answer every question or come up with a solution. Out of that, a lot of trainings have come up. We've got a number of clients where we're going to go through and do an executive workshop on the whole idea of ransomware, the idea of interfacing with outside counsel, the FBI, ransomware negotiators. It takes on a whole life unto itself. Likewise, even the employees that are on the front lines, as much as they've gone through the regulated trainings and the annual requirements, which is a great thing for good cyber hygiene, in the event of an attack, do they know what to do, what to say? Another one to throw a bone to our legal friends, the difference between something confidential and sensitive and privilege. A lot of employees get the two confused, or at the same time get into manufacturing or just different operation centers that aren't really touching the tabletops or security operations. There's a lot of ground to cover, no doubt.
Greg, let me give you final words here.
Sure. Yeah, no, I think the big thing is, making sure that your organization is prepared and not scared for what's going to they may potentially face. I think the big thing is, you may experience a cyber attack, and that's where cyber resilience really comes into fact of matter. You want to make sure that your teams are understanding that things will happen and that people need to be able to be prepared and be able to respond in a timely manner to make sure that things don't get worse. And I think, you want to be able to make sure that you have the plans in place, you're prepared, and your teams across the board, from basically your lower level folks that are doing the communications with potential customers, all the way up to your executives and your regulators, and your corporate communications teams, are also able to have the right communication talking points to be able to talk through the scenarios and have those lines of communication open when there's a time of crisis. And then coming out the other side, and making sure that you're using it as an opportunity. As Rocco had mentioned, testing your plan regularly, and testing your capabilities regularly to see, do you have gaps, so that you can go ahead and actually continuously improve your operations and your business resilience. And as you start to identify gaps, you use those opportunities to make yourself that much better, that much stronger, and you come out a much better, more stronger company at the end.
Very well said. Look, I've got more questions for you, and so do our attendees, but we've hit the end of our time here. So I've got to say, thank you very much to Rocco, to Stephen, to Greg. Really appreciate your time and your insight today.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure, Tom.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
Have a great one. Take care.
course, to our speaker, to our attendees, rather, I'm going to say thank you so much for giving us your attention for this session. Please give us feedback on the topic, on the speakers, what you'd like to see at future events. Enjoy the rest of today's summit. And again, we're grateful for your time and attention. For Information Security Media Group, I'm Tom Field. Thanks so much.